What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Starters are a quintessential part of the Pokemon experience, and it goes without saying that the expectations are always that we have three. One that's grass, one that's fire, and one that's water. However, a question I've seen over and over is whether or not you could have 4 starters. Actually, it's usually more of a statement saying they should have 4 starters. But I don't think it's that simple. So, to talk it over and to straighten it all out, I figured I would call in the big guns.
Hey Pokemon Masters, Emperor Cubone, BirdKeeperToby here. The reason that the Pokemon starters work as they are currently is because their types are in perfect balance with one another. If we're trying to add in a 4th type here, then the ideal scenario is that we're adding a type that causes that kind of same perfect balance, where everything is super effective against each other in one direction, and then weak to each other in the other direction.
And since there is another relationship to worry about, it would have to be neutral, creating 3 distinct difficulties against each of the other starters.
So if, for instance, Pikachu were to be inserted into the Kanto lineup, at first glance it might work, seeing as how Electric would be super effective against water, neutral against fire, and resisted by grass. However, that's only one side of the situation.
When you look at it from the perspective of the others, you see that Squirtle is weak to 2 of the other choices, and that Bulbasaur resists 2 as well, so the whole scenario is a bit more complicated than you might first expect. Now luckily, there are certain types that we can throw out immediately due to their lack of certain relationships.
Normal is not super effective against anything. Ice can be discarded as well due to it only resisting itself, making it ineligible to properly complete any closed loops. The same can also be said of Dragon, on account of the fact that it's only super effective against itself.
Ghost also shares in this self-super effective cycle. So while technically making it an even playing field, 4 Dragon Ghost starters doesn't exactly present the player with diverse options, so everyone getting a Dreepy is out.
Another common problem is a double effectiveness loop. Take Ghost that we were just talking about. It's only super effective against itself and Psychic, so that beats Fighting, which beats Dark, which beats Ghost, and it looks great until you realise that Dark has an advantage over the next 2, and it's hard to clean up, with the only other resist being Fairy, which would then change it to Dark having 2 weaknesses.
So if we look at each of the different setups with 4 types with the good, neutral, and bad matchups, the only one that I could find that actually works is Psychic, which beats Poison, beats Fairy, beats Dark, beats Psychic.
This provides a super effective and not very effective relationship in either direction, and it's neutral across the diagonals.
Although I'm not a big fan of the Dark immunity to Psychic, so I would like to give the Psychic starter access to Aura Sphere or something just to give it a chance. Ideally, with a new relationship of 4 starters, they would create them brand new for whatever Pokemon game in which they try it. But let's see if we can get an idea of what it could be like with existing Pokemon. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of 3rd stage Dark or Poison solo types, so starting with Obstagoon, we can have Alakazam, Crobat, and Florges.
Obstagoon might have the normal type, but it doesn't interfere with any of the others that we've laid out. It does, however, have the stipulation of evolving to level up at night, and since it's our only option for a 3-stage Dark type line, it necessitates that the rest of the starters should require some kind of evolution mechanic as well. That's why Alakazam works as the Psychic starter, requiring a trade evolution.
And the same holds true for our Poison choice with Crobat. While we could have chosen one of the many grass or bug types to fill the spot, Crobat is here because it evolves through happiness. And luckily, the flying type is just some added flair that doesn't inhibit any of the matchups. Plus, we wanted to avoid the stone evolutions since we have Florges for that role.
Now, Florges does have multiple forms, and none of the other Pokemon have multiple forms, but you know what? They're not interchangeable, so that can just be a fun little bonus detail for whatever Pokemon fan-made game that these starters are drafted for. Now, as far as we can tell, that's the only relationship with 4 starters that would be balanced in the setup that we've outlined. But what about adding in dual types to try and fill in the gaps?
If we had to stick with the fire, water, grass usual crop, the best way I could think to do it is if we added Bug, which is weak to fire, but super effective against grass. Now, of course, fire beats both of them, so if we add Dragon to the grass type, fire would then become neutral. This doesn't exactly leave us with solid 3-stage options, since Mega Sceptile wouldn't really cut it, so I would say Flapple would be your best bet to maintain proper balance through the whole line, and then throw in other 2-stage options like Excelgor, Arcanine, and Milotic. But there are other matchups that I would recommend first.
Take Electric for instance. The only way it could be an option is with Ground as well. So if we add in Grass to beat Ground, we find that Flying is a good type because that beats Grass but is weak to Electric. Now, on its own it's close but not perfect. See, Grass resists Electric, and since Flying is already here, we have to pair it with Water to make Electric a neutral hit.
That's pretty good. And if we wanted to assign Pokemon, obviously that would mean we have to use Ludicolo, but then we can put it across from something like Luxray. The problem comes from Flying, since there are no pure 3-stage flying Pokemon. So if we wanted to pick up, say, Staraptor as a powerful option, since, as we know, Normal doesn't change the matchups. And Ground also has a distinct lack of pure 3-stage lines, but that's okay because I wanted it to have a little something extra to neutrally hit the flying type anyway. So for not adding resistances or strengths that would change the outcome, I would say that Crocodile is the best bet.
There are indeed other ways of patching up these type effectiveness squares, like with Fairy fighting Dark and Steel. Alone, this does nothing except give Fairy and Fighting both 2 targets, but if we add Fire, which resists Fairy, to the Dark Pokemon, then it's a great neutral relationship. And if we add Bug to the Steel type to weaken the Fighting, we see that not only are those relationships neutral, but Fire can take them down instantly. If that were the case, we could use something like Aromatisse, Hariyama, Houndoom, and Excavalier as our options.
Yeah, we could work out some sort of mandatory trade if we needed to do that. But another possibility stems from my main suggestion of trio replacement types for the starters, Ground, Poison, and Grass, with just adding Water. To make sure that Ground isn't weak to both, we simply add the Steel type. But honestly, that's a pretty easy trick since Steel resists so much anyway, and doesn't have too much in the way of offensive interference. For something like this, there are no 3-stage Ground and Steel types, which is a travesty, but a Alolan trio will work to keep the proper typing the whole time, and can easily be paired with the likes of Floatzel, Gogoat, and Muck.
But one of the best setups would start with Rock, Bug, Grass, and Water. Left alone, they would be unbalanced, with both Grass and Water being super effective against Rock. However, if we add on the Steel type to the Rock Pokemon, Water would still hit super effectively, but Steel's natural resistance to Grass would make the hit neutral.
That's right, but what has me really excited about this one is the fact that you can keep adding more to make it even more devastating. It started with the idea to add Flying to the Bug type, which of course made it 4 times weak to Rock. So then I thought, what if the Bug type had a 4 times advantage over the Grass? So then we add in the Dark typing. Then of course it's an easy choice to make it a Water Ground type to get obliterated by Grass, which is perfect because the Rock and Steel type that we already had is quad weak to Ground. This way each of the starters has a 4 times advantage over the next one in line, yet, impressively, still maintain neutral hits across where they should.
If we wanted to use pre-existing 3-stage Pokemon for this, we could include Shiftry, Seismitoad, Aggron, and Butterfree. Now, Butterfree is obviously not as impressive as some of the rest of the others here, but perhaps we could alleviate that by just letting it keep its Gigantamax form. Ultimately, the stats on all of these Pokemon are vastly different from one another, and only Aggron's stats are really on par with the starters we usually get. So, as we said before, ideally these relationships would be properly explored by brand new Pokemon that could keep these dual typings throughout to maintain proper balance between them all.
But that being said, I think the main takeaway should be the fact that it is indeed possible to have 4 starting types within a Pokemon game that could actually be balanced from a gameplay perspective.
It could create a really interesting rival dynamic, with one being the pushover type that has been prevalent in recent generations, one being a little bit more neutral like Wally or Bianca, and the third being a throwback to the jerk rivals of old. The ones that are truly hard to beat.
Wow, having all the rival types would be awesome, and finally make everybody happy, so maybe they should actually make a game with 4 starting types. Although that would drastically alter the difficulty of the gyms based on your choices. But speaking of gyms, many of you have probably seen my series on missing gym leaders from each region, and I've had a lot of fun coming up with the answers to those mysteries. but I don't own the topic, and I know that others will have different ideas, so we're launching Toby's version of the series over on his channel. And if you liked mine, I know you'll like his.
These are just some of the ways they could arrange starter Pokemon in groups of 4, but there are almost certainly some combinations that we've missed, so please let us know any that you might find down below in the comments.
Or let us know what other styles you could use them in, since the rules for the relationships were just the ones that made the most sense to me. So also let us know if you can come up with any different way to balance 4 starter types against each other. And remember to keep all of this in mind when you're out there making your fan games, guys. We will happily take a simple producer's credit. I can sort of see why this topic has never been done extensively, because it's honestly just a bunch of math. But it turned out to be a thoroughly interesting puzzle. Thanks for helping out, Toby.
Hey, BirdKeeperToby, thank you for having me, and let me know if you try and ever figure out a 5 Pokemon type rotation. I'd love to work on that together as well.
That might be rough, but be sure to check out our work over on BirdKeeperToby's channel, and let us know your type matchup findings down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!